The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Connected Table Live. We're your hosts, Melanie Young and David Ransom, your insatiably curious culinary couple. We love to travel the world to bring you the amazing people we meet, the wine we drink, the foods we eat, and the places we visit to inspire you to get out there and travel. Eat, drink, explore, and be inspired with us. You know, we just got back from a kind of a whirlwind trip to Turin and Milan.
It was a busy one.
That was my first time in Turin and Milan. What about you, David?
No, I've been a number of times before.
Yeah.
But we hadn't been together, so that was nice to be able to visit there with you and show you a little bit of the stuff that I'd seen before.
It's always fun to be with you.
Yeah.
So we were there for Grandi Langhi, which was this giant, and I mean giant, trade, like wine fair to spotlight all the wines of Piedmont, which is a lot of wines because Piedmont has a vast region in northern Italy. It is the highest concentration of DOC and DOCG wines anywhere in Italy. There are so many ranges of wines, and there were 6,500 people, which means it was crowded. Fortunately, we got to hang out in the press area and do some immersive tastings, as well as meet with producers. We didn't get to visit any wineries. David's photo is from behind us, is from one of his more prior visits.
Yes, it is.
But we hope to go and spend more time. But one of the great things that we love about going to these wine events is, one, we get to meet producers. Two, we get to expand our palates. And for me, having never been to Piemonte, I was able to taste wines and kind of deep dive into different areas and really continue my palate education. And the other thing we love is catching up with friends in the business. And we caught up with many good friends who were over there, including our guest today, Yannick Benjamin. Yannick Benjamin is in the honor of being on, you know, like how Saturday Night Live has like the 5 Club. He's the 3 Club, because we only have 3 guests who have been on our show 3 times: Jacques Pepin, Kevin Sraley, and now Yannick Benjamin. And Yannick's story and life, it just keeps evolving, so that when we saw him, I said, David, we always love to have people on the show who were at the event with us, so we're getting a little talking about the event, but also catching up. I said, you know, I'd like to catch up with Yannick because so much has happened to him since we last had him on in July of 2021, and it's now February 2026, that we need to catch up. So he's joining us today from his home in New York, and we're so excited to see him and welcome him again to the Connected Table Live.
Good afternoon. Good to see you. Thank you so much for having me on. I you know, in SNL they give out these the jackets for the 5-timers. You know,
we're gonna have to come up with something. We'll call it the Connected Table Hat Trick.
Yeah, we'll have to maybe we'll get inspired from Mardi Gras while we're here. I mean,
exactly.
You know, really, really good. Well, you know, it was good to see you in Turin at Grandi Langhi. We were all moving around so fast, and then we left there, Turin, and went into Milan to spend 2 days because I'd never been, and it's Olympic fever. The Olympics are starting, which we can talk a little bit. And we were watching you zip off here and there. You were in like the Val d'Aosta, and you were in Nizza, and I'm like, man, this guy gets around. How do you do it, Yannick?
How do I do it? I mean, I think it's the passion of wanting to learn. I was very lucky that I had an incredible mentor, especially during my time working at Ledoux's, a small wine shop down in the West Village. And I worked alongside this gentleman named Claude Dolgesser, who had just been around the world. He was incredibly well-traveled, still well-traveled. And he was sort of my sage, you know, he was my Socrates. And so he always taught me, never lose your curiosity. And I mean, being in this industry, it's so infinite. I mean, you're constantly learning. You think you know something, but the reality is the more you see, the more you hear, the more you taste, the less you know.
Couldn't agree more. And what's interesting though for our listeners who don't and viewers who don't know you is that you do this with some challenges. You have been in the business a very long time. So let's take it back to how you got into wine, and then talk about that time in your life that changed your life forever.
Yeah, everything's full circle. Talking about Kevin Zarelli, actually, his mentee was the wine director at Le Cirque 2000, which was a restaurant that was on 50th and Madison Avenue at the Palace Hotel. And it was owned by Sarah Macchioni. It was a pretty legendary restaurant. And then it reopened at a new location in the mid to late 90s, highly successful, incredible wine program. And this was sort of just at the boom of the sommelier here in New York City and also in America. And Ralph Hersham, who was the wine director there, who was a longtime sommelier at the Windows in the World, I was following him, and that's sort of how that kind of trajectory of me getting into this industry at a very young age of 18 really started.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. And it's great to have such mentors. And so you were working where? You were working at Le Cirque. Where were you when things changed?
Well, I worked at Le Cirque, and then I worked for Lydia Bastianich at Felidia Restaurant, and then I worked over at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel with Gabrielle Kreuter. And then at the age of 25, I had a car accident, and then left me paralyzed from the waist down. And so really talking about, this very common word that we've heard a lot about in the last few years, pivot, I had to pivot for sure. And certainly working in hospitality and trying to navigate those obstacles of being a full-time wheelchair user in an industry where, like I said, it has its obstacles. You're talking about stairs. Space is always a very challenging situation. You're talking about hot oil, fire, fast-moving pace. But we, like everything, we try to navigate and we try to work with what's given to us.
As a restaurant work veteran, I can feel your pain in that respect, because restaurants they're a super busy place, and you have to have your wits about you when you navigate through the dining room and whatnot. But I can imagine in a wheelchair, it ranks it up to a whole nother level, because you need the space to be able to move around with a wheelchair, which a lot of restaurants don't afford you. And I think we'll get into talking about how you worked with that with Contento a little bit later. But it's a crazy situation to be able to have to do that. And I really must applaud you for it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, one of the things, Yannick, because we've shared your life and we talked about the absolute, the recovery, the mental and physical recovery you had to go through. And then, you've had to reach deep into your spiritual depth many times. Okay. So let me just set this out. So, okay. You had the car accident and you were paralyzed, and I never say that we're confined and disabled, because you're not confined and you're not disabled in my mind, because you get around the world more than most people. I know people that never get around the world because they just don't bother making the effort. You get around the world.
Yes. I do.
And so for me, you're freer than anybody. But you also, and I think people need to understand that you've had to face perceptions and challenges in terms of just remaining employed and the first impressions. And then, and I thought about this a lot actually at the wine fair in Grande Langhe. A lot of people don't understand, because they're not in your seat at the table, what the challenges are and how to be more thoughtful about and accommodating to deal with it. What are some examples of how you've managed to overcome the challenges and face them and overcome them to help enlighten the people who will say, wow, maybe we could do better?
Well, to quote the movie from the Shawshank Redemption, some birds are not meant to be caged because their feathers are too bright, right? So I think that, listen, obviously not everybody has the privilege or maybe the resources to be able to travel as I do on a wheelchair. But I think, there's a lot of research that goes behind it, and then reaching out and explaining to people. And so it really starts with me, right? I need to be able to reach over the aisle, explain. And I think people, generally speaking, are very receptive, but it's not an overnight thing for sure. I mean, I was just reading something, Aaron Judge, I think the year that he hit, the record-breaking year where he hit like over 66 or 67 home runs, I think he struck out 3 times the amount of the home runs that he hit. So there is definitely moments where you're going to try something and you're going to fail. But I will be perfectly frank. I think overall my experiences with people in the hospitality industry, because people that work in hospitality, whether it's in wine or they're a chef, or it doesn't, but in that sort of whole spectrum, people are willing to listen, and people are just naturally generous, right? And so I think, yes, of course, there aren't too many people with a visible disability such as myself in the industry, but I am really grateful to be surrounded by so many people. And now I've kind of set the template. So when I reach out to winemakers out in, for example, Barolo or Barbaresco or wherever I'm going, I think people just kind of know now, and we figure it out.
You are a co-founder of Wine on Wheels. It was really forward. As some of you want to tell our listeners and followers what that is and what your goals and objectives are.
Absolutely, for sure. Thank you. So Wheeling Forward was what I started along with Alex Elagudin, who is a dear friend who was also in a car accident, and we met because we were in the same rehab center. And so then a few years later, we said, well, why don't we take our resources, raise some money, and help all these other individuals that have a disability in our community and kind of uplift them. And a lot of that is through our events, through our seminars, through our tastings known as Wine on Wheels, using wine, and basically, a play on words, turning wine into hope, right? And so that's what we really do. And it's great because the concept of wine in itself, right? It's something communal. It's something to bring people to the table and to uplift. And I think that's what we've done. And we continue to do so. And it's not just people with disabilities. We've raised money for a really wonderful community center known as Holy Trinity Community Center here in New York City on 88th Street between 1st and 2nd. And they're doing tremendous work. And every Saturday they have a sit-down dinner for people that are food insecure, and they're served and they get to eat with dignity and respect. So there are things like that we're trying to do.
That's great, because I think right now, more people need dignity. They need to feel a sense of place.
Completely agree with you, Melanie. Yeah, absolutely.
You're in New York right now. You live there. You're a lifelong New Yorker. You're born in New York. Your family, we lived there for a long time. You worked there. You opened a restaurant, Contento, to rave reviews and Michelin nod. Incredible. And then you made a painful and very public and honest assessment of closing, and wrote a very open letter to the New York Times about it that resonated with a lot of people. Share a little bit about that, because you weathered the pandemic, because it opened before the pandemic, and then God, I'll never forget, it was like every 2 minutes you were closing down. The city was closing down and reopening, and everybody's just like in a tizzy. What was that like, making a decision? And I want you to do it this way. We have friends who've made the decision to close businesses, whether it's a restaurant or ever, and it's never, I closed my first company. Sure. Take us through the why it was the right decision and what has come out of it, because a lot of people go through it. They go through a lot of emotional angst, and you did. I did. What was that process? What took you out of it?
Really, both of my parents are in hospitality. My uncles, they're all French, and they came here seeking a better life, like the classic immigrant story. And they all worked at the famous Le La restaurants here in New York City. And if you would have come to Contento, you would have gone to the bathroom. If you used the bathroom, there were a bunch of older vintage menus where my father and my uncles worked at, including myself. It was, an opportunity to open up a small restaurant. We had this incredible deal. The rent was very low. And I said, well, let's just cash in our chips and see how it goes. I think what helped me was that I had very realistic expectations. I was not expecting to make any kind of money. As a matter of fact, I probably knew that even if it was successful, I might be losing a little money. But hopefully the long-term goal was that if it became successful, that maybe we can open up, multiple units, and maybe I can make a full-time living from that. And so we signed the lease in 2019. It took well over a year, between getting Department of Buildings approval for construction and, of course, the construction workers, all these kind of delays. And we're in New York City. The building that we were operating the restaurant in I think it was built in 1895. So every time you opened up something, you found something, and then you were responsible. You had to read. It's just classic New York City story. And so then finally, we actually had on December 1st, 2019, we had a preview tasting with some friends and family. And we're going to open up sometime in late March, early April of 2020. And then sure enough, the city was shut down. I believe it was the 14th or 15th of March.
Right.
So we were completely delayed. We didn't get to open up the restaurant officially until June 10th, 2021. And I guess we could have opened up earlier, but as you said before, people were opening, people were shutting down, opening, shutting down. And we knew that because we were already in the red, that if we opened up and we shut down again, it was going to be the end. So we kind of, we held steadfast, we held on, and we finally opened up. And it was, at the very beginning, it was hugely successful. We could never have imagined this small, tiny restaurant really, at the end of the world as far as Manhattan goes. We're kind of like in this this middle of nowhere block, and it was busy more than ever, and it stayed like that for quite a while. But I always knew deep down inside that business model of us being a destination spot was not sustainable. We needed more. Eventually, we would need a bit more kind of walk-ins, neighborhood support. And sometime in 2023, we definitely saw the numbers drop. And we were a wine-centric restaurant. We also saw the numbers drop off a little bit when it came to wine sales. And it just became really challenging on trying to figure out how to get people to come. And we just had also challenges with the crime. I mean, it was really hard, a couple of incidences where we had to get the police involved, and we actually had to hire for a couple of months 2 full-time security guards, bouncers that I used to work with back in the 90s, because I used to moonlight as a bouncer, working the front door, which is kind of really crazy. It's not part of your budget when you have a restaurant.
And they're expensive.
They're expensive.
And finally, to be honest with you, by November of 2023, I already had a wine store. I'm a small business owner, and I'm working a full-time job, so I can continue to have health insurance, because I certainly need health insurance because of my situation of being a full-time paraplegic. Yeah. And finally, by the end of November, listen, the numbers are not making sense, and let's get out of this before it even gets worse and we go into full debt. And it just gets really ugly. And it just kind of manifested that way. And then by, I think, our last day of full operation was December 20th, around that time. And that was it.
It's an amazing, as you talk, I think about New Orleans, because New Orleans is similar. You have to have a security guard in front of you. Emerald just announced the closing of a restaurant. People are fickle. There's, it's everywhere. It's not just New York. And I want to underscore that, because we don't want to make people think that New York is just a crime-ridden place. But crime is a problem everywhere. I mean, we go to the drugstores now and everything's locked up. So, God almighty, you can't even get Tylenol anymore without getting permission.
Oh, I know.
You were so honest about it in your op-ed in the New York Times. Your opinion about, you had one of the top rated Michelin nodded you achieved the dream. Contento was a resounding success in the public eye and in the professional palate and everything. But the reality is, everyone, you can have a highly successful restaurant to everyone's eye, and it still will not necessarily be a financially successful one because of the odds these days of running a restaurant. And you brought up an important point, health insurance. A lot of places don't provide it right now with what's going on in the United States, without getting into politics, that people, we were at a restaurant last night, a Mexican restaurant, and there was a sign at the front, please be patient with us. We are very short staffed. Well, we know why they're short staffed, because a lot of people have disappeared. So it's a challenge. You're probably glad you got out of it, but reflecting back on this incredible knowledge you have, having worked so many now areas of the industry as in wine, as an owner, is designing a concept that is accessible. What would you advise to people who want to get into the business and do it right, but also do it right in a way that they're not going to lose their faith or their shirt?
For sure. I mean, I think the most important thing, I mean, obviously passion is really important, but you've got to be pragmatic about it, and you've got to have reasonable expectations. And if you think you're going to go open up a business and you're going to, live a lavish lifestyle, and I don't think most people do that, but I think you got to really understand those first few years, it's going to hurt in the pocket, and you better be prepared to receive a phone call at all hours of the day, leaky pipes. You get a couple of Hurricane Sandys and your whole basement is flooded. And there's just so many factors and so many variables as an owner that you're responsible for. Your line cook decides to call out sick or not. Maybe it's beyond their control as well. Who's going to fill in for that line cook? Those are the big challenges that we are facing as an industry. And as I said, I think the hardest part for me was we were a restaurant that really focused on obviously good food and good hospitality, but also inclusivity and all that kind of stuff. But I always felt that I was somewhat of a hypocrite in many ways, because I was not able to provide adequate health insurance for individuals that were working in an industry where it's pretty hazardous, right? I mean, there's a high likelihood of you getting injured while you're on the job because you're running, you're on your feet all day, and again, you're surrounded by sharp objects, and so that part is just immensely challenging. On the other side, selfishly, it definitely made me a better professional. I learned a lot, without a doubt. I learned a lot about myself, and even though I was warned by great restaurateurs like Rita Jaime, who you all know very well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even though you think you've talked to everybody and you've been doing this forever, it's not the same when you're actually the owner and you're responsible for these individuals and for their lives, for that matter.
Well said. Wow. And it's so true. And Rita and Andre went through so many of our friends, because we've all been in the business for so long, we've seen their highs and their lows and their ups and downs. Yeah. But everyone, including Rita, lands somewhere and does okay. You have Beaupierre Wines and Spirits, which is a lovely little store in Hell's Kitchen near where you live and grew up. I've been in there. I don't know if you have. We're in New Orleans now, but we love this kind of store because it is manageable. You know what I mean? Versus the big supermarket. What do you look for when you for stocking the shelves at Beaupierre, which you run with your wife Heidi?
For sure. I think one thing that we try to do with most of the labels that we carry in the store, and like you said, it's a small store. It's really a family-owned store. Is the labels that you'll see, most of them, generally speaking, we have some kind of connection with the winemaker. We actually either visited the region or we've rubbed elbows with the winemaker. We've had conversations with them, and we can actually tell the story and we can actually validate them firsthand.
Kind of like this show.
Yeah.
Absolutely
like
That's how we pick our guests. I mean, we will not just don't send us a press release in a bottle and expect us to spend all this time doing a show, right?
Exactly.
So you were just in Turin with us, and then you went on. What were some of your impressions over there? What are you excited about now?
Well, first of all, I just want to say one thing. I've just like you, I've had the good fortune of being all over Italy, but this was my first time really spending time in Turin. And I really just love the city. I have to say it's magnificent. It's really a beautiful city. So that's the one thing I'll start off. So whoever's listening to this, please check out Turin. Amazing restaurants, a great walking city, absolutely surrounded, gorgeous. But I went to visit the Valle d'Aosta, which is just majestic, and the wines are beautiful. And especially we've seen the trend of kind of light, fresh, vibrant reds and high acid whites, and certainly look no further to the Valle d'Aosta. Great visits. We went to go visit Le Cretz. We went to visit another producer called Grosjean. You can clearly see sort of that French Swiss, a bit of that Germanic influence there, obviously still retaining that Italian sensibility. And really, and great food out there as well. Then we went to go visit the Langhe, which I've been to a couple of times before, and really spent a lot of time with the winemakers out there. Great wines. I love that whole area. It's amazing.
It is a beautiful area, and the wines are great. Obviously it's home to Barolo and Barbaresco, two of the great red wines of Italy, but it's also home to Asti and Barbera and so many other different white wines and red wines that we all drink.
White wines kind of were
but
interesting.
A lot of times we don't get a sense of place for them, and so they're all in Piedmont. I mean, Piedmont's it's a huge, very vast region and a very varied region.
And you got Asti and Barolo, and in our little tasting area and we had this long list. There was no way in 2 days we were going to get past any of it. Of course, I'd beeline to the Barolo, but I also, because white wines sell really well in New Orleans, I'm sure up there, we wanted to dig into some of the little indigenous white wines, like Herbaluce and Timorasso, and we just kind of were like, wow, and Rorero, and that was like a real fun find, because most people think of aside from Asti, they think of the big B's, Barbera, D'Asti, and Barolo and Barbaresca. But the whites were a wonderful experience.
I completely agree. I think one category that's really underrated is Italian white wines. I think they're food friendly. I think the price points are always really generous and quite good, considering all the things that we've been through with tariffs, and they remain to be really good. I think they're very food friendly. Timorasso, I don't think I've ever tasted as much as I did because of the Grande Langhe. So it kind of, I obviously have had it many times before, but to have it there side by side with multiple producers really was enlightening. Favorita, Herbaluce, and of course Arnaz. I think they were all showing really well, for sure. I think that's what I came out of it, just like you both, was how delicious the white wines from the Langhe from Piedmont are.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, also they're very food friendly, but they've also, one of the things I love about Italian white wines is that they've got great acidity.
Yeah.
But they've also got what I call viscosity. They've got a nice body to them, so they stand up to food at the same time, and it's a win-win situation.
Completely agree. Yep.
And then when you were posting from Le Cletch, which I met for the first time at the Opera Vini, the Wine Spectator event in Italy, they were there. I've never been to Val d'Aosta. It's a tiny little area. It doesn't have a lot of PR budget, I guess, because nobody ever said. But you posted from there, and we had just had the wine in Milan because we were having a dinner. So when we got to Milan after Turin, which is a fabulous city, it's just like a giant walking museum outside, and we didn't even go to the indoor museums. I mean, it has one of the largest Egyptian museums in Europe, but we were so busy walking outside, goo-goo-guying all the architecture. But we went to this restaurant. We were in the mood for seafood because I'm having issues with meat. And we went to this place called Nautilus. It's fabulous. And we had the Le Cretch there, and it was like, wow, this is like so wonderful. And then the next restaurant we went to, which ironically is called Maria, not related to the one in New York, same thing. We had another Val d'Aosta wine there, which is fabulous.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said before, when it comes to these Italian whites, but particularly the Val d'Aosta, really just beautiful, and the reds too. Petit Rouge, Fumain. These are all kind of local grapes from that region, and again, incredibly food friendly. But not only that, but these are reds that I would drink, on the patio, on ice, just like almost like Beaujolais or Dolcetto for that matter. And I really just enjoy that aspect of these type of grapes and wines, and very well made, well executed.
And just, we've not been, but just for our context for our viewers and listeners, the Val d'Aosta is literally a little corner in the northwestern part of Italy that borders Switzerland and France. So it's almost Switzerland. I'm looking at a map now, and I see Zermatt and Chamonix and Valais. So you're going to get that feel, because Swiss wines are so awesome. And I'm sure the skiing is awesome, crazy. Now, what is really neat is we were in Milan, and Olympics, the opening ceremony is coming up in a few days. And it was like Olympic fever everywhere. Now, something that we haven't shared with everybody is that you are practically a Paralympian. I mean, you have competed in many athletic events. Talk to us about that resolve and how you do it.
Yes. Well, thank you for asking. I've done, I don't know, now 12 New York City marathons, a couple
Amazing.
of Chicago, Boston marathons, I should say. I've always enjoyed competition. I love participating in sports, and working out is like someone not having lunch or dinner, right? It's just something that I need to do. It's just ingrained. It's part of my life. It's so important. Before, I definitely was motivated by trying to beat my personal records and competing at a high level. And life changes. You work you're working so much, and so I now do it for enjoyment, but also to raise money and awareness for my charities and all that kind of stuff. And I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do the New York City Marathon this year, but maybe next year I will do it. It's nice to take a little break, but I always love doing the New York City Marathon, to do it in my hometown city. I always feel like I see something that I've never seen before. But it's very gratifying, and that's why I do it. And especially, listen, we're in an industry where we like to eat and drink good stuff, and this kind of keeps me balanced.
Yeah.
Well, we're curious. Are you going to follow the Olympics and the Paralympics? And do you know any of the Paralympics? Because that is really one of the most exciting things ever, is the Paralympics.
Absolutely. Oh, for sure. I mean, what the stuff that they're able to do. I mean, all of them, by the way. It's beautiful. I mean, it's hard to imagine that all of them are waiting every 4 years to be on this major stage, and they only have one chance to get it right. So it's amazing. They are amazing. That discipline to be able to do that is really kind of inspiring.
It's a commitment, that's for sure.
How do you find your discipline? Because, what we didn't mention is that last year you suffered a pretty bad fracture. It was pretty bad, and you were very public. You're very public about the ups and downs of your life, which is inspirational, because I think a lot of people don't share, and they're just miserable inside. You actually wear your heart on your sleeve. You had a fall. You fell from your wheelchair, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was. It's funny because there are falls where maybe you break a bone, but then that's the only thing you have to deal with. But it was just such a catastrophic. It led into other things. Where I had to be under supervision and observation, I should say, maybe. When you're spinal cord injured, when things like that happen, sometimes you fall into the category of autonomic dysreflexic. And so that means that because I don't feel below the waist, wherever the point of injury is, trying to send signals to my brain. And usually you have if your spinal cord's intact, your brain's sort of just kind of regulating everything. And obviously I didn't have that. So now my heart and my whole body's working in overtime. So it was just kind of an intense situation. Then I had issues with my health insurance. It was a very bizarre situation. But fortunately, I got out of it due to my lovely wife Heidi and the support of my friends and family, and I mean the incredible community. I mean, they all reached out. It was and supported. It was unbelievable, and I'm so grateful, and I'm eternally grateful, and even more of a reason why I have to continue to work to give back to others, because everything works full circle. And so, that was my situation last year, but here I am now talking to you both.
But your spiritual resolve was incredible, because every day you posted you were exercising. You were exercising so much, and I'm like, damn, I got to get off my butt and start doing stuff. And then you posted very inspirational messages. And I think a lot of people right now, as I said, are suffering in silence for whatever is digging into them. And to have you say, I'm going to beat this and really get out, it was really, really great. Really great. And like I said, you travel so much, and I know it's you've got it down to a system, because it's probably wasn't easy, but you do do you travel on your own, or do you have people with you when you go?
No, I travel on my own for the most part. I mean, if I travel with somebody, it's because we're traveling together. But I mean, I do travel. I'm very lucky that I'm able to do that, that I'm able to, and like I said, there was some trial and error, but I do have it down to a science. And I'm very grateful that I get to go see parts of the world that a lot of people will never get to see, smell, and experience. And I get to do that. And it's, like I said, even being back in the Langhe and getting to hang out with people like Mario Fontana and Luca Corrado and Julia Negri and just and them sharing their personal passions. I mean, and bringing it back to New York and then sharing it to other people who can't be there. It's an immense honor to do so.
We consider it an honor too when we're invited, and we really take it. When we travel, we take it very seriously because we want to learn. As you said, you're always learning, always, and there's new people to meet, and you want to bring it back and share it with people. Because I don't know about you, Yannick and David, but I get so frustrated when I go to a store, or I go somewhere, and people just get the same thing. They don't want to try anything different. They just, and maybe because they don't know or they're intimidated or whatever. And I'm the one, and David can vouch for this. We were like literally at the drugstore. We were at Walgreens. And the guy was like, had a bottle. I won't say which one. I was like, dude, you can do better. I mean, this is Walgreens, so you know what the selection is. But I was like, dude, you could do better. And
we actually do that a lot. I think we're wine aisle muses for a lot of people. We've never met them. We've never met them, and we'll go up to them and say, you should try this one.
Right.
I mean,
is that your price point? We can match that.
I was like, there's not a lot to pick from, but do this one instead. And that tells the story behind it. It was actually a Josh Sellers wine, and I launched it in the United States both ways. It was much better than what he had picked. Yeah. And later he came to, he actually, we were doing trick or treat. He came by. He's like, oh, you're the one who told me about the wine. We really like it. So do you like to do educational prep? I mean, what do you want to see with your life now? I mean, you've accomplished so much. What do you want to see happen? Where are you thinking?
I mean, I'm enjoying the time of having to be able to travel and to share those passions with other people. I mean, I have a lovely wine store that my wife is overseeing. So that's really great. I think that we all know that we're sort of, we're facing challenges, a new era in the world of wine, right? Kind of figuring out how to navigate all that. Am I losing sleep over it? Absolutely not. We're in an industry where it's been around since for 8,000 years, right?
Yeah.
And we went through a prohibition in this country from 1919 to 1933, and we overcame that too. And so I think it's just we're just kind of reconfiguring how we do things in the industry, and that's good, and that's okay, and that's fine. I think there's some people, some companies that might have over-delivered, and they went by the metrics of COVID, which were a bit, artificial. Because, but I think overall, it's. I think we're just maybe kind of like getting rid of some of the fat.
Yeah, the COVID put everybody in overdrive in a lot of ways. It created a lot of TikTok stars that we don't care about. It created a lot of excess product that nobody cares. It created a lot of because people. It created a lot of heavy drinking. My theory is one of the reasons people were drinking less is they drank too much during COVID. So they had to correct themselves because they all went to the doctor and found out they had like fatty liver and high cholesterol and they gained weight. And it's just a correction.
It's a correction. And I think also people that are in the industry who represent these wines, I think for a long time, we got really hung up on blind tasting in the parlor tricks, blind tasting and getting too technical, that we need to get back to sort of the historical context, the emotional aspects of wine, sharing the stories of Elena and Luca Corrado and all of these incredible people and the work that they do. And that a lot of them are farmers and they're working hard and really creating that experience, right? And I think if we can do that instead of, this is this amount of pH level and malolactic fermentation and 20% new oak and all that, but really kind of making this sort of almost religious experience and this moment of like stopping and enjoying every sip of wine and making that more of a cultural thing. And let's getting back to that, just like the ancient Greeks did in the Agora, where they would have wine and they would talk and they would discuss. And that's the etymology of the symposium, right? Let's get back to that.
I couldn't believe it.
It's funny. While we were all in Torino together, Melanie and I had a conversation with somebody who said, I've stopped publishing my notes for people because nobody cares about what I actually write. So I am not going to publish my notes anymore.
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah, that just saves us a lot of time. We don't have to lug our computers. It's true that the story and the people you enjoy it with, wine is something you share with people, hopefully, and with food. The experience and the texture and the sensory experience of wine is what you want, not the science of it.
Correct. And that's why when I post on Instagram, I talk less about, well, I just had this wonderful wine and it was blackberry cassis currants, blah, blah. But instead, I want people to understand the feeling that I got when I was up by the Alps.
Exactly.
And the challenges they face as winemakers to make this very unique product, this liquid geography, because I do believe that with wine, it has this innate ability to transport you to a certain time, to a certain place. And that's what, and really, it's certain emotions as well. And I think that's what really is really unique about wine in itself, for sure.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think the wine industry needs to stop staring at its belly button and overanalyzing and looking at metrics and ROI and all that crap, and just get back to emotion.
Yep. I completely agree with you, for sure. I think and it will. It's just like you said. I think you use it. Right now there's a big correction happening. You can't make a crooked straight without a ruler.
It's like that with everything. It's like, I remember when everybody was, right now everybody's putting protein in everything, and you have protein this and protein Starbucks and protein that. That's going to correct too. No one's going to care anymore. It's just, it's like you get into overdrive and overkill.
But you remember, listen, I remember if you had anyone that was in the baking industry, people were freaking out for a little bit because of the whole gluten-free movement, and people who are in pastries, they're still around and they're doing all right. And they just had to correct themselves and figure out other options, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, and not overanalyze everything to death, because at the end of the day, you got to have more fun and more enjoyment and less overanalyzing everything. Exactly. Well, so when are the next Wine and Wheels programs, and where can people learn more about Wine and Wheels? Because really
please, just go on to Instagram. We're Wine on Wheels NYC. Wine on Wheels, the actual grand tasting will be sometime in October.
October 2026. Okay.
Yeah. October 2026. Thank you. There'll be a big announcement. And then throughout the year, if you want to sign up to our newsletter, just go on our website, wineonwheels.org, and sign up. And, you'll join us on one of our smaller seminars, tastings, you name it.
Well, I think it's a great combination to, experience great wine and learn about it, and also support an important area, which is, creating opportunities for people that, have some physical challenges and or other challenges. Because you said you're also doing stuff with food insecurity. So it's just, a lot of people are challenged now. So we want to reach out and, help. But you have defied odds and challenges. And like I said, somebody last night, we were friends, and they were like, we don't know how you do it. You're always traveling. Aren't you exhausted? I was like, well, we actually have a friend who on the show. And he's the one who inspires us not to get tired and say, nah, not today. Go out there and do it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just do it.
I think traveling and being, surrounded by different cultures and different languages. Also, there's something exciting about being vulnerable and kind of putting yourself in that situation. It really challenges you in the best possible way. It's very beautiful at the end of the day.
Well, that's a great way. That's very inspiring, because I think we all have some type of vulnerability.
Yes.
Whether it's physical or emotional or mental. And it is, I'm a big get out and step outside your comfort zone. So
I'm with you all the way on that, Melanie.
Well, Yannick, I hope we get to see you again on the road. As we always say, and when you live a nomad life, you go, see you down the road.
Yes, indeed. It's always a pleasure to see you. You're two of my favorite people. You're tremendous, great human beings. And thank you for all that you do for our industry, because it's important work.
Well, we enjoy it. It's a labor of love, and we love you. So be well. Give your beautiful bride, Heidi, a hug for us. Check out Wine and Wheels. If you go to New York, check out Beaupierre Wines and Spirits, and follow Yannick at Yannick Benjamin. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. You were Melanie Young and David Ransom. We've been doing the show as a labor of love for 12 years. Can you believe it? The Connected Table Live. Follow us at the Connected Table. Check us out on YouTube, over 65 podcast channels as we travel the world, hopefully lots. And learn to step outside your comfort zone. Eat, drink, explore, inspire with us, and always say insatiably curious. Thank you.